People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Welcome to the Gentleman Uncles. This is Kyle.
And this is Brylan.
And we just watched what could possibly be one of the worst movies ever made.
It only has a 6% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Sound of Thunder.
Came out in 2005. Star's biggest name is Ben Kingsley.
Yep, I couldn't tell you who any of the other people in it are.
Well, I know that I've seen Edward Burns do other stuff.
And there's
and Corey Johnson.
The girl that filmed everything.
Yeah.
Jenna Roper.
Jemima Roper.
Jemima. She's in a great little miniseries called Lost in Austin that was really enjoyable.
Oh, okay.
But only weird people like me know what that is. But this film, it's loosely based on a short story by Ray Bradbury, and it's about a company that offers safaris back in time to hunt and kill an Allosaurus.
Time safaris.
And they have 3 rules. The first rule is don't change anything. Second rule is don't bring anything back.
Anything.
And the third rule is don't leave anything behind.
Yeah. So it's basically the same kind of rules that national parks want you to abide by. Take only pictures, leave only footprints, except there you can't even leave a footprint.
Yeah, but of course, because Murphy is a friend to these things, on one of the trips back, something goes wrong, and a series of unfortunate events later, someone steps on a butterfly, and that causes the complete reconstruction of the evolutionary chain of the planet.
And the genome of, mammals and plants and the climate. Everything.
It seems like mammals are wiped out completely.
Except there are some mammalian features.
There
were bats. There were huge bats, and bats are mammals.
True.
But
these bats had reptilian features, though. They had these...
Well, the talons, but that was still more avian.
Yeah, I don't know.
But then those baboon lizard things. I don't know.
Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to... The movie takes place in 2054?
2054, 55, yes.
Yeah, in Chicago. And what's the lead guy's name? I've already forgotten it.
Edward Burns.
Plays Travis Ryer, who is apparently working on his own to reconstruct animals.
Well, not working on his own. That's his side project, why he took the job at Time Safaris.
Well, because as it turns out, by 2054, human beings will be the only animals left on the planet, except for fish.
Well, the only wild animals left, because
fish are wild animals.
Well, he says that in the last animal that was born outside of captivity was a crocodile who died 38 years prior to the movie.
But then he says, and then poachers started hitting the zoos, and the virus took care of the rest.
And then the virus, unexplained the entire rest of the movie, the virus mutated the genes in such a way that even cloning them was impossible.
Which doesn't make any sense at all. Because, at all. Anyway.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, but except for fish.
That's just the first thing that doesn't make any sense.
Well, okay, so... all animals
fish were there that were...
When the first time wave hits, he's getting ready the next day, and the news is playing, and it's talking about fish beaching themselves on the shore of the lake, but the EPA needs to check them out before amateur fishermen can eat them, because people apparently just go out to the beach to pick up dead fish to eat.
Hey, if you're going to eat a possum off a roadkill, why not?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But, okay, the point is all animals are dead except for fish.
For some reason, yes.
And he's working on, I guess, my assumption is he's working to reconstruct a genome of the animal kingdom. Because when they go back to hunt and kill this Allosaurus, he takes DNA scans of it?
And that, okay. There's so many, I don't even know where to start on what the really bad science that's never even explained to the point where maybe they came up with some bullshit that would make it make sense. Okay, we can talk about how they time travel and the questions I have about that, but yes, let's start with this. So they don't want to leave anything behind. To shoot the dinosaur, they use super compressed nitrogen that is nitrogen ice. They shoot, and then it melts, and it leaves nothing behind but gas because it'll sublimate, and it's fine. And it doesn't have a shell casing or anything. It just fires out of this gun, which they say is a Gauss gun, which I believe is something like a rail gun, which I believe works off of electromagnetism. But if you're firing something that has no metal in it, how did it fire? Yeah, exactly. So there's no metal casing on the shell, but this electromagnetic railgun shoots these bullets. Okay.
Yep.
But how do these bullets that are purely made up of nitrogen ice take sensor readings and send them back through their time portal to the machine?
Yeah. Well, that's assuming that it's the gun or the gun or the bullet itself that's taking the scan. It could be something completely different. It could be part of the video recorder thing. Hold on, let's backtrack a little bit here.
Okay.
The problem, this movie is a little unique. Well, hold on. It's a little unique because it looks horribly cheap, but
Yes.
we're okay with that.
Yes.
We're okay with that, even though it's laughable.
It was actually, when the movie came out, the badness of the effects and Ben Kingsley's hair were the two things that it got lambasted for the most.
Well, yeah, Ben Kingsley looks like the space dad from Megamind.
Yes. I don't understand why and he doesn't really have an accent, but he kind of does. And I know he's a good enough actor to not have an accent if he wants, so I don't know what he was doing. But sure.
Maybe he just didn't care.
Yeah, probably not. But, yeah, but so the movie was really made fun of because this movie came out in 2005, and it looks like the effects were made, a decade before that.
It looks like there's a film out there that was made on the cheap. It's one of those bad movies that we'll actually probably get to at some point, called The Amazing Bulk, and it's a very cheaply made ripoff of The Incredible Hulk.
Okay, yeah.
But, Brylan, I know you haven't seen footage from it, but I'll show you a video of it, and it looks akin to that. We'll put a clip down in the description so you'll be able to see.
It's like N64 graphics.
It is. It looks like old PlayStation 1 era graphics. And but it's not always that way, because there's a scene where one of the main characters and a woman are crossing the street, and it looks bad, but it looks okay. It's passable.
Yeah.
But then there's another scene where the same main character and another woman are walking up a sidewalk, and there's traffic going by next to them, and that just looks horrifyingly bad.
Well, okay, so the reason that we're okay with the effects being bad, this movie was originally supposed to come out in 2003. It was originally going to be directed by, what's that guy's name?
Rennie Harlan. He was the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and
Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 2, and he recently, this year, Hercules, he directed that. So he's an established director. He's been around a while.
Yes. So he was going to do this, and he had cast Pierce Brosnan in the main role. Apparently, he had some sort of disagreement with Ray Bradbury, in which he ended up leaving the movie. And then shortly after that, Pierce Brosnan left also. So, okay, fine. Franchise Pictures is the production company. They start filming, and partway into post, they go bankrupt. And most of their funders pull funding. This movie was supposed to have an $80 million budget. It ended up with a $30 million budget, to the extent where the VFX department had to use off-the-shelf graphics software.
Off-the-shelf graphics and sound effects. Like the guns have this, like stock laser blast sound.
Yes.
And the baboon lizards, which we'll get to, have stock baboon screeches and stuff. Very bad. But we're willing to forgive it because they did what they could with what they had, which is fun.
Yeah.
We are forgiving gods, and
yes, we are.
We will look down on this and give that a pass. What we can't forgive,
so many things,
is everything else.
The science, the plot holes,
let's start off with the basics here. So they're going back in time to the Cretaceous period to kill an Allosaurus that, one, gets trapped in a tar pit,
two, was going to get burned by a volcano 5 minutes later.
Yeah, so they go back to hunt something that is going to die anyway.
How they figured that out, they don't explain.
Yeah. So, but the point is, they go back to kill something and have the lowest impact possible. So it's the same. The point is, though, it's the same Allosaurus every single time. And this safari is basically like a Disney ride. Everything's controlled. Everyone knows exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. They go back, they shoot, they come back. That's it.
Okay.
And then they get back, and Ben Kingsley gives them a speech about how awesome they are and how they're like Columbus and the
exact same speech, and he spins it perfectly for by the time that things go wrong. It still works, and it's amazing.
Yeah, Ben Kingsley, this movie lights up when Ben Kingsley's on screen. He does a great job in this.
Well, all
he knew
movies
exactly
light up when Ben Kingsley's on screen. He's an amazing
True.
actor. Really quick, because we kind of glossed over the whole they travel back in time aspect to deal with the problem you were about to discuss. They travel back in time, you find out, basically through standing inside of a particle accelerator that has been reprogrammed with whatever their AI super intelligent computer system is, and somehow it works kind of like a transporter.
Well,
but
okay, this is another problem I have. So they stand in this thing, and they're strapped in, and they have these things that come over their shoulders.
Exactly.
Because they're told they can't move.
Yes.
They can't move because they need to be reconstructed on the other side of what I'm assuming is a wormhole.
Something.
Exactly the same way. But, okay, cut to, it shows the Cretaceous period, the portal opens up, they have this hovering, like, force field walkway that they walk on so they don't touch the ground. And the thing that they're strapped in is gone.
Yeah, no, so maybe inside that black hole portal type thing, there's like a disembarkation room, or maybe the entire inside of the particle accelerator itself transports there, and then they all just unstrap and walk out.
No.
Yes, exactly. None of that makes sense. And where does that fucking walkway come from?
It doesn't happen either because at the end, when he goes back by himself in that like jerry-rigged machine that they make,
right?
It shows him like holding on to the edges of the portal. It shows him strap in, and then it shows him like holding on to the edges of the portal because they did that slingshot thing where he went back even farther and then went forward a little bit. And the thing's already gone before he exits the portal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. I mean, and then the walkway shows up out of nowhere and like floats over the ground so they don't step on the ground. And where does the walkway come from? And why does the walkway continue on? And why isn't it just go straight? Why is it like turns around the corner where the bushes are?
Okay, the first part, why it continues on past where they need to go, that's beyond me. I couldn't fucking tell you that. I was wondering the same goddamn thing. The second part, why it curves, if it's going to continue, I assume that it curves to avoid hitting anything.
Okay.
As to why, because they only walk about 30 feet.
Yeah.
That's the portal, and then the Allosaurus comes up and they kill it, and then they go back. Why they would need the walkway to continue on? It's so that they can fuck up and change the future.
Basically. And that's the basics of the questions of time travel. Then when we get into the whole time wave thing, I've got a whole other set of problems.
Well, and it's also important to mention that the guns that they use, they're all tied to the leader of the expedition's gun, so none of them can be fired until he fires to prevent people from just firing random.
Whatever that button is, just to release the... But why...
To prevent people from randomly shooting things, I'm assuming.
Yes. Why only the guns that are given to the guests aren't the ones that are hooked up? Why he has to have control over the entire team when the entire team's done this just as many times as he has? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so much. But here's my first. And I'm willing to admit, writing time travel is hard. There's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
Yes.
And
yes, but
arguably you can make up your own rules
to an extent.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a school of thought that time travel in and of itself is not possible, but travel to a parallel dimension that is taking place at a different time.
Oh, you're talking about like how Timeline does it.
Yeah, in Michael Crichton's timeline, that's how they time travel. They don't travel in time. They travel to another dimension that is running slower than ours.
Right. So well, there's also just one main concept of time travel a lot of people uses. You can go back in time, but once something changes, and this is kind of how Back to the Future approaches it, once something changes, you can never get back to the place you started from. You're always going to, if you go forward from there, you're going to go forward to a parallel universe that is running concurrently with yours, just different, however much that changed.
But within that, there's also the what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Law.
I was just going to bring that up. The Lost rule, which is everything has already happened.
Yeah, and the movie 12 Monkeys kind of follows that
yes,
rule too.
Yes.
The past is the past. It already happened that way. There is no changing it, period. Or you travel back into your timeline as it exists now, and you can change things. That is how Back to the Future does it.
Yes.
Or you travel into a parallel dimension that is exactly the same as ours, just running slower and exists in a different
timeline does.
And that's how Timeline does it.
Yes.
The way this movie seems to operate is closest to the Back to the Future school of thought, where
closest to
where you travel back within your own timeline, and events are malleable. You can change things.
Yeah, and if you change something, then it will affect where you go back to when you go back forward.
Exactly. And it's important to note that they are traveling back to the same timeline, because if they weren't, the entire premise of the movie wouldn't make any sense, because the whole thing is someone steps on a butterfly and that changes the future. But if they weren't in their own timeline, then stepping on a butterfly wouldn't matter.
Because they would go back to their timeline and everything would still be fine, because it was another timeline that got fucked up.
Exactly. But if they are going back to the same Allosaurus every single time, how is it that they don't run into themselves over and over and over and over again?
Because they're always going back within that same 5-minute window to kill the same Allosaurus in the exact same spot every time. So they should have an infinite recursion.
Yep, and we only see 3 safaris. I'm assuming that they've done multiple ones before this.
Yeah.
We only see 3 of them, but they all travel back to the same 5-minute window. But none of the previous safaris are there.
Yeah, they're only them.
So already we have a logic hole that is making me stutter.
Yeah, it just kind of either it doesn't make sense or the entire rest of the movie doesn't make sense. I'm not saying those are mutually exclusive, but
I am.
No, they both don't make sense.
You're right. Okay. Second problem. So, through a series of events, the main gun that is tied to all the other ones malfunctions and doesn't fire, so no one can shoot the Allosaurus. So they tell the 2 rich guys to run while they
hide behind the bush over there.
To go hide behind the bush around the corner where the walkway goes, while the scientist fixes the gun or whatever. I don't know how he fixes the gun because it's short circuit.
He pulls out like a soldering iron and like goes and opens a side panel and rewires the safety mechanism so that it can turn off. I don't know.
Okay, he goes off to the side and like lures the Allosaurus to follow him, but I thought the Allosaurus was stuck in the tar.
Yeah, right?
I thought that was the whole point, but it's still walking around in the tar. Okay, whatever. That is the smallest, most minor problem.
I know, yeah, exactly.
So he fixes it, kills the Allosaurus, and the 2 other guys come running up, and they go back to the future.
And once you see an ominous boot print left on the track.
Yes, clearly indicating that someone stepped off the path.
Yes.
Once they get back, the first sign that something's wrong is a power outage that happens overnight. And then the next morning, they say it's 70 degrees in November, which that's fucking normal to me.
Right. But I guess not for Chicago.
Oh, okay, yeah. So clearly weather patterns are changing. And what this is
the worst plot device. Oh, okay.
I am pained even explaining it. Okay, so this movie operates on the basic principle of the butterfly effect. You change even the tiniest innocuous thing in one place and it has giant repercussions somewhere else.
Yeah.
As ripples in a pond. This movie takes the ripples concept literally.
So literally.
And literally, the changes come in they're called time waves in the movie. They are giant waves that stretch up from some indeterminate place.
Yeah,
I don't know where
they come from, but they sweep across at least all of Chicago.
And they're changing the history of the world, the evolutionary history of the world in stages.
Species by species, kind of. Or, like, level of cognizance.
Well, no, the lady that invents the time machine, she says that humans will change last because we are the last species to evolve, which I don't know how she
I don't think that's... Yeah, exactly. The most recent evolved species, Homo sapiens. Ugh, no, lady.
Which, wouldn't, like, domesticated dogs be...
Right? Or the finches that were studied, or, the Galapagos Islands.
But anyway, if something has changed in the past, yes, there will be changes, and it'll affect the future. What that doesn't mean, but what that means is, okay, something has changed in the Cretaceous period. They travel back to the future.
And everything's fine for the next 24 hours.
For some, things happen every 24 hours, which, okay. But from the perspective of the future, everything should already have happened.
Yes.
Because the past is the past, and the future is the future.
65 million years ago.
Yes, but instead, everything's happening, and then a wave that people are aware of. Shouldn't they not even be aware that changes are happening?
no one should even notice that something's different, because it should all of a sudden be, this is how it's always been.
But these waves come and they have such force that they can physically interact with objects. Like, it knocks him off a walkway and it flips a car. So these changes happen gradually, and they take place over all time simultaneously, because there's a part where he tries to go back and stop the person from stepping off. Hold on. He goes back to try to stop the guy from stepping on the butterfly, and he can't make it back, and he ends up in like the 1860s in a scene that's very reminiscent of Back to the Future 2.
Right.
With a bunch of
three.
Excuse me. Yes, three. With a scene with a bunch of Indians riding at him, and then he ducks, and
all
then
the
he
horses
sees a wave
just jump
coming.
over the path like nothing's a big deal.
Which I would think that would be just as big of an impact as anything else he did.
Yeah, because all those Indians just saw this dude in a crazy suit standing on a floating platform.
But anyway, okay, so the Indians ride by, and he sees a time wave in the 1860s, and he runs back into the portal, comes back to his present, and
he says, "A time wave is coming!"
The time wave comes synchronous with the 1860s. It exists across all of time. Yeah. But if that's the case, it should have already fucking happened, because if it happened in the 1860s, how is it happening again in 2054?
Because it's haunting him.
It's chasing him.
That's exactly. And so their whole scheme, I don't know if you've ever dropped a rock in a pond, but there's not some place you could drop a rock otherwise that's not going to be affected by the ripples. Like, the whole pond surface is going to be covered by the ripples. It's going to hit the edge of the pond eventually, and there's nowhere that's safe. But their whole scheme is, well, if we send you 1 extra year back, so if we send you 65 million in 1 years, and then slingshot you back forwards, you'll be able to skip over all the ripples and then jump to where you're supposed to be. Well, why don't you just skip over all the fucking ripples and just, do it without adding the year? If you can jump over the ripples, you should be able to jump over the ripples to any point. Unless it's, honestly, they're saying the ripples started at 65 million years ago, so if you jump to 65 million and 1, there aren't ripples.
Well, the ripples started the moment he stepped on the butterfly.
Yes.
So jumping back before he steps on the butterfly, the ripples don't yet exist, and then he can come up behind them.
Yeah.
That still doesn't make any sense, though, because how does he break through the ripples to begin?
Yeah, exactly.
There's too much stuff that doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay. All right. Now that we've got the basics,
yes,
this butterfly was apparently the most important thing to the whole of evolutionary history on the planet, because its disappearance changes the climate, which, all right, you can argue that human beings' impact on the climate...
or you can even just argue that weather patterns are very complex, and without one little butterfly flap, the winds... whatever. Okay, maybe I can see climate change. Maybe.
Somehow this butterfly disappearing in the Cretaceous period turns Illinois into a tropic zone.
Yes.
Because a jungle springs up. An actual jungle, not a forest.
Yeah, a jungle, and it's gigantic, carnivorous, semi-conscious plants.
Yep, that are poisonous. Also, hybrid baboon lizard monsters whose skin is so tough, the high-powered Gauss rifle nitrogen bullets can't penetrate it. They have to shoot them on the underside of their neck. Apparently, the alternate future is at an extremely hostile place.
Yes.
Because something would need to evolve armor that thick, like tank, skin as thick. And when I say it can't penetrate, I don't mean like it hits them, but it doesn't really affect them. I mean the bullets bounce off. Yeah. So it causes that. It causes bat monsters that are the size of cars.
Yes. Probably a good 12, 15-foot wingspan.
And sea monsters, like sea serpents, actual sea serpents.
Yeah, like an oarfish crossed with a barracuda, crossed with
and a crocodile.
And a crocodile.
Good. And the final change is humans turn into fish people.
Yeah, with whiskers.
But okay, here's the real kicker. At the end of the movie, when they finally send the last guy back in time, just as the last time wave comes and wipes out humanity and turns them into fish people.
Yeah.
All the buildings... Okay, by that logic, if humanity didn't exist, none of humanity's artifacts should exist. And yet, Chicago is still there.
Every building is still standing, everything, it's just all overgrown with trees, and there's a fish person standing in by a computer terminal next to a particle accelerator.
Yep.
Yeah, sure, makes sense. And then, okay, so while Kyle takes a moment, so he goes back. They send him back, and slingshot works and whatever. He gets back to where he's supposed to be, but he's only going to have enough, because that's going to take a lot of power to slingshot him. He's only going to have time for like 20 seconds. So he stands just around the corner, but within view of one person, and talks to her and tells her to take the recording and make sure that only he gets it when they get back. And then he turns away to leave, and he sees the guy about to step off the edge, and so he jumps and pulls him back, and he tackles him and is lying on top of him, and the guy doesn't step on the butterfly, and he's lying on top of him. The guy freaks out because the guy knows that he's, another 20 feet down the path fighting an Allosaurus at the same time, and then he, poof, completely disappears.
He fades away.
So, is this, he has now just gone back to the fish people time, and now he's the only Homo sapien wandering around in his universe with all these fish people and carnivorous plants and whatever? Or is this that my job here is done, so now I no longer exist? But
I think he just ceases to exist.
But that is the classic grandfather paradox, which is, if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, then you wouldn't have existed in the first place, so therefore you could not have gone back and killed him. So,
but grandfather paradoxes don't exist in this timeline, or in this scientific realm, because if they did, nothing would have been able to have been changed at all.
Well, yes, true, but I mean, if he goes back in time, and they even establish, with the conversation between the main character and the chick who created the whole time travel technology, if we succeed, no one will remember that any of this happened. They're kind of doing a hard reset. I think it's because they are switching to a different timeline where it hasn't happened.
If that's the case and the other timeline still exists, why did he return to it?
Exactly.
You should be stuck.
Or he should just go back and then be the only human with all these fish people and plants and animals.
But that would be him willingly going back. He would have to step back through the portal that he arrived in.
Oh, that would be, I guess, if that's the only way he can go back.
Yeah, otherwise he should be stuck and there'd be two of him now.
But he just completely vanishes.
In other words, none of this makes any sense.
Yes. That's what we're boiling it down to.
Okay, and we're just like, we can't go, because we can go on for fucking hours on this, but we have to slow down. Another problem is, I never got a grasp of who any of these people are. They're just sort of there, and I guess I'm supposed to care about them. And yes. I know that the one guy wants to rebuild animals. Ben Kingsley likes money. The chick that films the thing likes Blythe, I guess.
But she's also the daughter of the main character's mentor.
Okay.
Who he promised to take care of.
Okay, but that's all we know about her. She went on a date with a guy. She went on a date with a guy.
She went on a couple dates with a guy, and he got upset, and the main character got upset because that's like his little sister.
And then he saw her skinny dipping when she was 8.
Yes.
There you go. That's it. That's all you know about it. Then there's the black guy who gets stung by one of the plants.
Genius guy.
He gets stung by one of the plants and eaten by all the baboon lizards.
And he used to have, when he was 9, his grandfather gave him a telescope.
Yep, and they looked at galaxies. Then there's the doctor who stole cars to put himself through medical school.
And he's British.
And then there's the government guy who also likes money.
Yes.
And then there are the two rich guys who one guy has some kids and the other guy just wants to shoot things, including himself.
And his wife kicked him out of the house because he was having an affair.
Yes. That's it. That is literally all you get about these characters. Oh, then there's the chick who invented the time machine and she's mad. She's
like Cassandra.
Yeah, she's pissed off.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. That's we literally described the character development of this movie.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah. That's really.
Is there anything more to say? I'm trying.
It's mostly just really poorly thought out or not thought out at all. Plot holes and really poor excuse for science and. Time travel's cool, let's make a time travel movie, but we're not going to think about it, even though it's probably the most complex plot device any movie will ever have to deal with. We're just going to kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
And some of the shit fell off the wall. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Was the butterfly being alive the thing that's important? Did the evolutionary history of the planet change because the butterfly died, or because the butterfly was brought back?
It changed because the butterfly died, And then when they brought the butterfly back, all of a sudden, everything was just going to stay fine.
Because they make such a big deal about the boss of the company turning off the biofilters, which prevents organic matter from coming through. But if the butterfly's already dead, what would it matter if it comes through or not?
Well, they would have realized that something would have changed, which I know it does. And besides, if it's going to keep organic matter from coming through, how do they get back?
I assume that it's the reverse way the Terminator time machine works. Synthetic stuff can't get through, so they wrap it in organic stuff. And in this, organic stuff can't get through, and that's why they need to wear the suits.
Okay.
That's I don't fucking know. That's my best guess.
It makes sense because those suits never really made sense why they were so ultra important, except for the fact that I guess they were circulating their own.
Well, the oxygen level of the Earth would have been much higher back then, so...
I'm not giving them that much credit. I'm thinking that they just were recycling their own air so that they didn't bring germs back.
I think they just thought the suits looked cool.
Yeah, probably.
But they make such a big deal about the biofilters being turned off. They turned off the biofilters because it saves money. Okay, who cares? The butterfly's dead. What's it matter?
Yeah, I think it's just they would have been able to catch it earlier and go back and fix things faster.
But they would have had to do it. Okay. I really want to talk more about this, but there's nothing else to say.
I mean, there's nothing to say because the source material doesn't. It just provides questions, and each of those questions provides more questions. There's no answers that come out of it.
We could go on about the effects and how there's a scene where they get attacked by a bunch of beetles, and the beetle sound effects are awful, and they sound like a bunch of clicking, and or the Allosaurus roar is like stock.
Yeah, everything's stock, and it's just. But I feel bad for them about how terrible the effects are.
Yeah, that stuff you have to forgive because they couldn't do anything better. The writing is another. Okay, I'm going to talk about what the short story that it's based on is about. You know what happens in the short story? Yes. They go back. Yeah. They go back in time. He steps on the butterfly. Before they go back in time, they talk about how there's a presidential race, and there's a guy running that's a fascist, and isn't it great that he lost to the guy who's more moderate? They go back in time, he steps on the butterfly, they get back, the differences are some English words are spelled differently, and the fascist won.
Yeah, that's about the same as rewriting the entire genome of the species.
Yeah, it's a great work of subtlety, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But, fish people, that's better.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously...
That's really all there is left to say. I mean, there's nothing else.
It's just, I mean...
Yeah. Okay, what we're going to do next week, we need to cleanse our palate, so we're actually going to watch a good movie.
Yes.
The film is called The Perfect Host, and it stars David Hyde Pierce, and it's a brilliant little film. It's one of those movies that you find on Netflix when you're just trolling around for something new, and it's a real diamond in the rough. But we'll be talking about that next week.
Make sure you watch that one, because that one's actually going to be worthwhile.
Yes, it absolutely will be. I guess that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to, definitely our brains, obviously, by the amount we're stuttering and stumbling and having nothing to say, our brains need,
I don't think we've ever had this hard of a time with a movie before.
No. I mean, even last week with Double Dragon, I don't think we had this hard of a time.
No. Okay, well, yeah. Bye, guys.
Have a good one. Watch the movie.
Watch Perfect Host.
Yes, watch Perfect Host because it'll help prep you, and it's actually good.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.